Right then, we're back on the bank today to film a new edition of Skills School. So we've not been out for a while to do one of these, so what I thought we'd do is something that we've not covered really in depth before. It is one of my favourite ways of fishing, is some F1 shallow fishing, some nice short F1 shallow fishing, which is a massively popular method at this time of year at so many venues that I go to, most of the venues in the northwest. And what I want to target today is a nice stamp of F1s. I've brought us here to Moore's Canal at Cudmore, which is full of lovely sort of 10 ounce to a pound and a half F1s, which are nice. They're not too crazy like the little tiny ones can be. Also, they're not too clever like the big horrible ones can be. So there's lots of little things that I want to go through today, just to show you how to keep bites coming on them shallow rigs, and how to, just a few little tricks, hopefully, to make you put more bites in the net. It's probably the biggest problem that you have when shallow fishing for F1s, is converting bites into fish. So I want to just go through a few things that can help you do that. So firstly, I want to talk about some rigs. So to keep things dead simple, very typical of how people fish shallow for F1s. In this case, I've got 3 rigs set up. Yeah, and I've got them set up at 6, 12 and 18 inch. And they're going to cover pretty much every depth that I'm going to need today. Yeah, there will be situations at different venues where you might go a bit deeper. You might want to even up to about 3 foot in most cases, just in case. But today, it's going to be really good here. There's going to be a lot of fish really high up in the water. So those 3 rigs, possibly even shallower again, maybe if rules allow, are going to allow me to cover all my potential depths. And I just want to talk about when to change and the things I'm looking at for the reasons why to change. But firstly, we're going to talk about just one rig. So all my rigs are pretty much identical in that I've got 4x10 floats, and every single one is just shot with a bulk on top of a 3-inch hook length. I don't believe for 1 minute you need any other form of presentation when you're fishing shallow for F1s with conventional type rigs. In that, going back to the old days, I used to be a big believer in nice little strung out rigs that sink really slow, and they look nice. I mean, the presentation's a lot nicer. In actual fact, that's the wrong way to go. It's great for getting bites, but you just miss every flipping one whenever you get them. So instead, by having a fixed bulk on my 3-inch hook length, what I'm looking for more importantly is to find the depth that the F1s are feeding at. Not a nice slow falling rig. I want them to be at the depth that my rig's straight at, if you like. And then by having different depths to work out what depth the fish are at, I can swap about between them, find out where they are and catch the fish at whatever point they're at in my bag. So, say all 3 rigs exactly the same, 3-inch bulk on top of my hook length. And more importantly, more I'm going to talk about when we are fishing, every single rig I have incorporates a maximum of 3 to 4 inches in between me float and me pole, possibly even smaller than that. Yeah, gone are the days of, again, going back to my own fishing, I used to like having a fairly decent line, probably 6 to 8 inch, because my rig would work lovely through the water. I mean, there's no hindrance to my pole or my rig not moving it about. In actual fact, that was making me miss a lot of bites just doing that. Yeah, I was too stubborn to change, but these days, you almost need to forget about how nicely your rig's presenting. Yeah, it's about keeping that line tight in between your float and pole if rules allow. So it all depends on your venue, whether you have to have a line limit between your float and your pole, but if not, get it as close as you can. Yeah, if rules mean that you've got to be anything in excess of 6 inches, then you need to look at other options, jiggers, bigger hooks, things like that, but I'll talk about that later. So for today's, so everything's really nice and simple. So I've got my 3 rigs set at 6-inch differences, all with 2 to 3 inches between my float and my pole. And what that's going to allow me to keep a lovely tight line, so I'm pretty much not going to strike at a bite. But again, we'll cover that when we have a little fish. So all my deeper rigs, or my 2 deeper rigs, sorry, both incorporate a bristle float, just so I can read my bristle a little bit better. My little shallower one is a little inline dibber, which is, again, very, very popular. But for my shallowest rig, which again set at about 6 to 8 inch, I don't really have to read that as much. Every single bite's going to pull my lassie out, and there's very little chance of the fish being even higher than that. And if they are, I'm going to see the fish anyway, so I don't need to read my bristle quite as much on my shallow rig, so I can get away with more of a no-nonsense, less chance of tangling dibber. Again, just to keep things really, really simple. So lastly, or 2 things, with all this short shallow fishing, when I'm just fishing nice and short out my hand, I want to use my short shallow kits. Yeah, again, it took me a while to really, really be keen on these. I found them quite strange to use, quite alien to use, but now I'm obsessed with them. I don't think you can, there's no way of replicating anything as efficient as a short shallow kit when you're fishing short shallow. I mean, or there's a few other circumstances you might use them as well, but for short shallow fishing, I mean, you can beat someone just by having a shorter top kit, just because you'll be more efficient getting the fish in and landing them a little bit quicker. So, rigs wise done. Oh, last thing I want to talk about is my elastic. That's another thing I was going wrong. I used to use quite light elastics, thinking they're all nice, letting my fish go up my peg. That's another mistake I've been making recently, definitely, by swapping to me pink which is rated at a 6 to 9. So a decent, you know what I mean, I can pull a bit, I can catch a few carp even on it. But it lets me, it's soft enough for the fish to hook themselves, but lets me get fish in really, really quickly, get them be nice and efficient. And you'll see with everything that I do today, little tiny things is all about efficiency. In this short, shallow fishing, because you're catching big numbers of fish, it's about keeping little things as simple as they can possibly be, but remaining smooth and efficient to make sure I don't end up with any tangles, any calamities happening. And I just carry on putting a fish in that net every couple of minutes. So we're gonna have a little look at bait and see what's next. Well, for bait choice today, I've gone with as simple as it can be. I've gone with just 4mm Coppens pellets. I find they're definitely the best, and they don't sink too fast, but they sink at a nice sensible rate for catching F1 shallot. Keep them down a little bit in the water, whereas if I fed Coppens, normal coarse pellets, if I fed Screttins, it'd keep them a little bit higher in the water. So Coppens for me just keep fish a little bit lower. I tend to go with, when it comes to bait choice, for me, short shallow, there's only 3 choices. Yeah, normally if I'm going to loose feed, I either want to fish maggots, casters or pellets. So generally the venue will dictate what I use a little bit, what's more popular at a venue, but also size of F1 seems to matter. In the F1s are after today because they're small, quite new, I mean reasonably new, they're only a couple of years old. They're used to pellets, so pellets seems to be their staple bait, anything up to sort of 1.5 pounds. Pellets for me seem to be the best. Once fish exceed 1.5 pounds, then they get a bit clever, and then maggots and casters can really score. But for today, so everything's nice and simple. I've got my plain 4mm pellets, which I'm going to start by feeding, and I'm going to use on the hook. The only alternative that I've had is recently I've been catching loads of fish, carp more than F1s, but I want to have a little play with it today with a red hook bait. I've been proper obsessed with red hook baits when shallow fishing, or saying that even on deck as well a little bit. It just seems to stand out better, especially that silhouette when you're fishing shallow, just a darker hook bait. In the same way as that I'd fish a red maggot when feeding white ones, I just feel that a dark hook bait can catch me a few fish later on. Just if it goes a little bit funny later on and I need to eke out those few bigger, cleverer fish, just by swapping to something different. So I've got myself some of them red aggressor 6mm just to try them on the hook, but other than that, everything's as simple as it can be. What I'm going to do is just literally feed 10 to 15 4mm in my same spot all day and get the fish crawling for them, and then alternate between my rigs and see what we've got to go. So I'm going to give this little feed for 5 minutes, and then we're going to cut back and we're going to catch some fish. Now onto the fishing bit. What I'm going to do, I've been feeding that for about 5 or 10 minutes now, and there's been loads there already. They're already having a feed. But my starting point is always my middle rig. Yeah, I'm going to start on my 12-inch rig, which, excuse me, by starting on my middle one, what it allows me is to go either way. So if I start deep, I can only come up. If I start really shallow, I can only go down. So by starting on my central rig out the 3, that's going to give me a really good indicator how the fish are feeding straight away. And it's often, to be honest, the best depth to start at. It's often I get a good run. So I've got my little spot where I've been feeding, which for me is just into this nice little shadow. And what I want to concentrate on is grouping those pellets as tight as I can possibly get them. The tighter the group, the more the fish you've got to sort of jostle for position to get into that group, which in turn is going to make them a lot more competitive and going to make them crawling for the pellets. So I'm going to feed a couple of times before I go in, and then we're going to whiz this rig over. Just not too much of a slap, just a little slap first, Jock, and see what's going on. See that rig, so I've got that float really dotted right down, so I can still see what's going on. I can still see if it's going, so you can see there it's gone under 3 or 4 times, but it's not too much bristle to create too much resistance. So it's nice and low, so I can still read it, but it's not going to annoy the fish by having too much bristle sticking out. And if you can see there, already, it's going under all the time. You know what I mean? I had 5 or 6 indications there before I actually had a bite, before one actually pulled my elastic out, which for the first cast, I can put up with. But if it happens again next cast, those 5 or 6 little indications that we're getting could have potentially been fish. You know what I mean? Could have been fish in the net. A bit slow, but we'll speed up in a minute. So by swapping to a shallow rig, potentially already, because obviously I'm seeing indications, so it could mean that the fish are above my bait. So straight away, I'm thinking that the fish might be really shallow. And plus seeing them's a bit of a giveaway. I'm seeing quite a few swirls and fish moving. There's plenty of fish in the area. The same again, so there's no big hurry when you're doing this, it's just nice and smooth. By being smooth and steady, I can be a lot more efficient than if I try and go like a lunatic, like a windmill. Same again, straight in, miss a bite, straight again, see I miss another bite, so I'm missing lots and lots of indications very, very quickly. So I'd say that the biggest lesson I've learnt in shallow fishing is that never to have the belief of, oh, I'll get one in a minute. Yeah, it's never the right way to be thinking. If you're getting lots and lots of indications, then most of the time there's a more efficient way of doing things. So straight away there, in fact, I'm going to give it one more chuck after this. You see, everything's nice and slow and smooth, and I'm putting a pound F1 in the net every minute or so. So it's plenty for a decent weight. So I'm just going to give it one more go on that. Just going to ping a 4mm on. That's a funny shaped 4mm, we don't want him. Ping a 4mm on nice and quick. And give it one more chance, and this cast is going to let me know whether the fish are a little bit higher. If it happens again where I get 3 or 4 indications and don't catch one, then I'm just going to swap up to my shallow rig. Same again, little dip there, another little dip there. So it's reading little signs like that by having a bristle, so enough bristle showing for me to be able to read my float. It's going all the time, this. But at the same time, they're not proper bites, because if they are, they pull my elastic out. So it just tells me that this rig is potentially 6 inches too deep, and the fish are all above where my actual hook bait is. Which you can see there's a swirl there then. So again, eventually I'll catch one, but it's not the right mentality to have. So I'm just going to give this 10 more seconds, see if I get one. So if I don't, I'm going to whiz straight in and put that 6-inch rig on. A really shallow one, because I think that's definitely where they're feeding. So it's just taking too long to get a bite. I say that was a 12-inch. So now by swapping down to my little diddy rig, which is set at sort of 6 and a bit inches. Hopefully, if they're doing what I think they're doing, we should catch one. Let's have a look. Oh, that was shocking. Let's not do that again. See, I've gone in on that rig and not had a bite. It's quite interesting. It tells me that potentially at the minute they're in between the 2 depths, which can often happen. But I'm just going to give it a sec. Yeah, an odd indication on this, but nowhere near the amount of indications I was getting on the other rig. But a lot less, as in I'm not getting any proper bites now. So the difference between those 2 rigs is where the fish is feeding. Somewhere in between those 2 is where I need to have a rig to cover that depth. So because I've only got 2 inches of line between, oh, that was a proper bite. Maybe I was just trying to rush things a little bit too quick then. So if they can come a little bit quicker, maybe 30 seconds quicker, then I'll be perfectly happy that that's the right rig to be on. But what it's a simple case of doing now, once you're in touch with the fish, sort of, once you've had your little quick period of understanding what depth the fish want to be at to begin with, it's quite easy to keep in touch with them. And that what I'll do with this rig now is maybe have a little run. You often find that on your shallowest rig that we're on now, you may have a little run of the biggest fish you're going to catch. The biggest F1s often feed right up near the water surface, and then it goes quiet. This is starting to happen now. It goes quiet for a minute, maybe I don't get one. I can simply pick up my 12-inch rig and get a spell on that. And then if, depending what happens on my 12-inch rig, if I have problems, if I go back to missing loads of indications, or getting loads of indications and not getting a bite, you simply swap to your 6-inch rig. If the opposite happens and it goes quiet and you stop getting bites all of a sudden, it's just a case of dropping deeper to your 18-inch rig. So it's really, really simple, and just by reading your bristle to tell you what to do next. So I'm just keeping a nice constant steady stream of bait going in. The bait's as simple as it can be. I'm just feeding sort of 10 to 15 pellets 2 or 3 times every 10 seconds, just to keep them right up in that top 18 inches. So there's no fancy ways of feeding, especially not when you're catching such big numbers of fish. see what happens with that one. So, you know, so I'm not tapping and slapping or anything like that. Just don't find there's any need to begin with. Yeah, the fish are often very confident when you first go in. So I don't need to slap my rig too often. Do you know what I mean? I'll give it the occasional little plop in. See, that's gone quieter. I'm already not happy about the length of time it's taking me to get a bite. Plus, I'm not getting any indications on this rig. I'm just getting a bite and nothing else, which is right, but it's not happening quick enough. Not for how many fish I felt was present. So what I'm going to do, just a little trick, just so I can see exactly where the fish are feeding, is I'm going to swap back to that 12-inch rig. Let's give this 5 more seconds. So it could be there's a carp in the peg. There's been a few carp swimming in and out my swim. They can often make things go a little bit quiet. We'll see, the indications have just almost stopped straight away. So I'm straight off that, back onto 12-inch. But this time, just to try and work out exactly where the fish are feeding, so I'm going to lower my rig in nice and slowly. Yeah, so instead of slapping it and letting it do its own thing, I'm actually going to slap it, but then hold it up. Yeah, and just lower it in nice and slowly, and you can see just before that float hit the water, one had it. Just check that pellet's all right, it hasn't covered me. Nope, we're all good. Yeah, it's had it. So they're definitely just in between at the minute the two rigs that I've got set up. Yeah, and that one's got all the way down, so that one didn't have it. So we're lowering it really slow and watching that line for any little twitches. See, that's had it again. So the fish are definitely, at the minute, 2 inches higher than this rig. So I can fix that by just holding my line tight, holding my float just out the water. I'll say it serves as a nice little bolt rig for them to hook themselves, which is, again, all you're ever trying to do when you're fishing for these fish is to create a tight line. At any time your rig isn't perfectly straight in between your elastic and your hook bait, these fish are so quick in expelling that hook bait. They suck it in and spit it out as soon as they feel any resistance. And if your rig isn't tight, then there's not enough resistance for them to pull the elastic out. Which in my view, every single bite that you're missing, well, of course, every bite that you're missing a fish. So it's no good being like I used to be, all stubborn on, oh, I want this nice lovely rig that presents my rig beautifully because it sinks through the water nice and slow. Yeah, forget it. All you need to be doing these days for F1s fishing shallow is having a rig that you can read, which is why I find it very important to still have a bristle, but at the same time have a short enough length of line that every proper bite that you get, they're going to hook themselves. So as long as you stick to those two very, very simple rules, as long as rules allow, so it makes F1 fishing so much easier. And then it's just a case of keeping yourself nice and slow and just being efficient. Making the most of every bite, not going like a lunatic, just nice and slow, hook your fish, come back, feed, go back in, repeat the process. Same again, they're not going crazy, they're definitely calming down quite a bit now. Still plenty of indications on this rig, but here we go. Same again, my float was just out the water when that one's had it, so it's definitely telling me that's where I need to be. So I'm just going to give it, because I've got a few inches, I'm just going to give it an inch. I'm just going to put a tin around my bristle. Yeah, I'm just going to give it 1 inch, that really is at the maximum now I want between my float and my pole. Any more than 4 to 5 inch, and you're just going to miss bites as a result of it. But it's definitely going to put me among the fish. I'm going to compensate for the extra length of line, float sitting up, just by holding my pole slightly higher. So I'm not worried about my float, my pole interfering with my float at all. See how that's hooked it lovely? So little tiny changes like that. Why are they coming off? Little tiny changes like that. Well, that's all good. Can just put me back on the fish, and again, just make me a little bit more efficient. Can put a fish in the net every 20 seconds instead of 30 seconds. And when it comes to the end of the match, if you've been making all your decisions a little bit quicker than most anglers, it gives you a massive amount of time come the end of the 5 hours that you've spent fishing, rather than messing about at the wrong depths. And quiet again, it's gone windy. It's gone all windy, Rich. So, while it's going windy, let's have a little chat, because my feeding then was shocking. What I've gone through today, this is the basic where you haven't got too many rules to fish to. The issues that you're going to come against is when a venue has rules of a minimum line length between your float and the pole, which a lot of venues have. They often have 4, 6, 8, even 12 inches at some venues. And in that case, I'd say you can do your very best to hold your line tight by holding your pole almost right above your float. That can work to an extent. But my honest answer would be, in those situations, that's when you need to resort to self-hooking rigs. Whether you use overshotted floats or jiggers, that can be really, really the winning method at many venues. So Lindholm's one that comes to mind, where you're forced to fish a decent length of line between your pole and your float. In those situations, a jigger does it all for you. But my issue with fishing with bolt rigs and jiggers is that you don't have the versatility of being able to read your float like you can if you use a conventional type rig like we're using today. So hopefully, we're still a nice steady run, although it's not chaotic. I think if I'm putting a pound F1 in the net every 2 minutes, for me that's still going to be on the way to a very respectable weight. So what you'll find, I'll tell you what I didn't mention to start with. In today's case, we got lucky, it's just us fishing here. So we've got a whole lake to ourselves, so we can feed this line and catch on it straight away. So what you might find in a match situation is that most often this isn't a line you can ever start on. It's a line that needs to be built up. But at many venues I fish, it's the common place to fish across for an hour or fish down the edge for an hour while building your shallow line up, which is ideal. I mean, it'd be exactly what I'd have done in this situation. I was fishing a match on here today. So a shallow line definitely doesn't want to be attacked straight away. You're much better just building it up for half an hour, an hour. Oh, don't get me wrong, you get the odd silly day. But in most cases, yeah, give it half an hour just to get them fish really competing. And you'll find them much easier to catch and much easier to understand as well. So the more fish that are in the peg within reason, as long as it doesn't go like a swirling cauldron. He's rolled round it, that one. It's much, much easier to understand what depths those fish are feeding at and to keep in touch with them. Right, so I'm going to steal one more. Because at the moment, I'm perfectly happy spending my time on this rig. Now that I've took an inch on it, an inch off it, it's very noticeable that I'm getting a lot less indications, but all my indications are bites. Or the vast majority of my indications are bites. So that ripple's probably helping that as well. At it then. So I'm constantly watching that float just to see if it'll tell me. It's not telling me that I've got bites, or it is, but it's not giving me an indication to strike at. The last thing I want to be doing is striking. But what your float is doing is giving you an indicator of when and why to change. So it needs to be used for the right reasons. So hopefully, by keeping in touch with these little changes I'm on about, it'll just lead you to be a little bit more efficient when it comes to F1 shallow fishing. So have a go with that.